Hey guys, Chase with Sherpa Equipment Company. Today we're going to be installing our Diablo rack on this Ram 2500 Mega Cab. This rack is designed to work with the 5th generation Rams. So we're going to go right into what you're going to be receiving in a package from us. Also, before we start that, I should note that this is a drill rack. It is an invasive install. You're going to be drilling holes in your roof. If you don't feel comfortable with this, we highly recommend taking it to a professional installer. If you need help finding one, give us a call. We have a list of people that we trust to help you do that. Other than that, if you do feel comfortable taking it on yourself, this video is going to help you. So we'll go into what you're going to get from in a package from us. You're going to be getting your crossbars, your wind fairing. This wind fairing, you'll notice, has cutouts for the clearance lights on the roof of this truck. We also have ones that will not have those cutouts, but have the cutout for the antenna for the trucks that do not have clearance lights. It's going to be the same install process, just a couple different parts here and there. So you'll have your wind fairing. You're going to have your wind fairing brace that will attach to a crossbar. You're going to have your 4 mounting feet. 2 of them are labeled F or DIF for Diablo front. 2 of them are labeled DIR for Diablo rear. You'll notice that there's notches in each of the bottom corners. What this means is this is showing you which side these mounts are going to go on. Notches on all of our racks always face forward, so you're always going to have the notch facing the front of the truck. Moving down, you're going to have your billet rivet mounts. You're going to have a stack of hardware. I've already kind of organized it a little bit and got some washers on the bolts, and you're going to have your rivets. You will also have a tube of silicone for the drilling portion. All right, so now we're going to jump into assembling this rack and getting it up on the truck. The majority of this install is going to be done off the truck to begin with, and then throughout the process we're going to be putting it up, taking it down, putting it up a few times, just to ensure that we're drilling in the right places, we have the proper fitment, and everything is sitting the way it should be. So we're going to start right here on the table. I'm going to take my mounting feet and my rivet mounts. And I'm also going to take my M8 hardware. They're going to be M8 hex bolts with washers. And I'm going to be attaching the mounting feet to the rivet mounts. You'll notice that there's going to be 2 different types of rivet mounts. It's a little bit hard to tell just holding them up and looking at them, but you're going to notice the bottom edge or the bottom face of one of the mounts is completely flat, and then the bottom face of the other mount is going to have a contoured bottom. So you can tell the difference by holding them up together. You'll notice 2 of them butt up with no gap in the middle, and 2 of them have a little bit of daylight coming through the middle. So the contoured ones, those are going to be for your front mounting feet. This is very important to remember. If you set these up wrong, the rack probably will not fit correctly. So you want to absolutely make sure that the flats are going with the rear and the contoured are going with the front. So now that we know that, we'll get our front feet set up on the contoured mounts. To do this, I'm going to just take my M8 bolts, thread them into the holes below into the rivet mount. And when doing this, I'm just going to do them finger tight because these are going to be coming off before the final assembly of the rack, as these rivet mounts will be the things getting drilled into the roof first. So have them finger tight. It's going to be enough to show us our fitment on the truck, and I'm going to do that with all 4 mounts. So now that we have our billet rivet mounts attached to our mounting feet, I'm going to take a rivet, and it's a good idea before we get too far into this to just make sure your rivets fit through all of the holes on the rivet mounts. This way you don't get to installing all of them and then realize that one might need to get widened a little bit or something. There is a pretty tight tolerance on these holes, so check to make sure there's no powder coat extra hanging around in those rivet holes. If you do have excess powder coat stuck in the rivet holes, you can always just drill it out a little bit, get that powder out of there to make sure it's a nice clean fit on all of your rivets. Okay, so now that we figured out that all of our rivet holes are clear and the rivets work, we are going to be taking 2 of our crossbars, getting them on a table over here, and setting up our mounting feet onto those crossbars. This is the first step in assembling that rack off the truck, so we'll get those going and show you how to do that. Before we do anything here, we're going to do something a little bit different than any of our other racks. And I'm going to get a tape measure out, measure one of the crossbars. They should be 55 inches. And the only thing we're going to be doing here is finding the halfway mark, which is 27.5 inches. And I'm just gonna be making a mark at the halfway point. I just use a Sharpie, it's enough to see. We'll be coming to that later, but it's easiest to do while there's no mounting feet on the crossbar. So now that we got our mark there, we're gonna be taking our T-nuts. You're gonna need 4 T-nuts per crossbar. And I'm gonna drop them in the slot. The orientation of the T-nut is this little detent here, this little ball detent will be facing down into the slot. So that means when you're installing it, looking down on it, the flat face should be facing up towards you. The thick end, it doesn't matter which way that goes. Just make sure that all of the whole T-nut is sitting in the track. So I'm gonna drop the next 4 into the other crossbar. And what these are gonna be used for is attaching our mounting feet. Position of them do not matter right now. We'll be adjusting those as we go. But now we're gonna take the crossbar that we made the center mark on, and we are gonna set aside our front mounting feet, and our rears are gonna go on the other one. So now we'll get these attached to the crossbar. All right, so we're gonna do the front mounts first on this crossbar. The only thing that matters is that the bottom with the rivet mount on it is gonna be facing the outside edge of the crossbar. So we can spin it around later, but I'm gonna take my 1/4-20 hex with their washers, put my mount over the T-nuts that are in the crossbar below, and thread these bolts into those T-nuts below. Like most everything else in this rack to begin with, we're just gonna go finger tight, and then I like to back them off about a 1/4 turn. That way you can slide it back and forth, which will be crucial when adjusting where this rack is gonna be, or where the mounts are gonna be sitting in relation to the crossbar on the truck. So we'll make sure that obviously the fronts go with the front. You should be able to spin these in by hand, no problem. Again, leaving it loose. And once I got the front done, we'll set that aside, and we'll do the same to the rear. Same deal, rivet mount is gonna be facing the outside edge of the crossbar. And you'll notice that there's no particular position I have these in on the crossbar at this time, because all that will be determined once we get it up on the truck. So now we're gonna come back to this little mark that we made, which is dead center in this crossbar. Take our remaining 2 T-nuts, drop them in so the threaded portion is in line with that center line. This will be able to be adjusted later on if it needs to be. And then you're gonna take your fairing mount and line that up over it as well, and loosely thread the remaining 1/4-20 hex bolts into the T-nuts below. I'm gonna leave that loose again because this can move in and out, and but you're just gonna wanna keep it near that center line. It's just gonna help you line everything up later down the road. Okay, so now we're gonna return back to this small mark that we made on the crossbar at the center line, and we're gonna flip around our crossbar to make sure that the notched corners are gonna be facing forward, because this mount is directional. So we have the notches facing this way, means the fairing mount will be up here, or the fairing will be up here, so our fairing mount will be extending towards the front of the vehicle. So I'm gonna drop my T-nuts in where that mark is, roughly. Again, everything's very easy to move when it's loose. So now I'll lightly thread the remaining 2 1/4-20 hex bolts into the T-nuts below, and kind of line it up right on that center line. This isn't super critical, it's just more of a placeholder, and we'll make it a little bit easier down the road. But again, making sure that the mount is on the facing the same way as the front of the rack. So now that we got those assembled, we're gonna get a long pallet, and we're gonna assemble the side plates onto the crossbars off the truck. So now at this step of the process, we are going to be attaching our side plates to our crossbars. We just have a long pallet here. It's kind of awkward to do. You might be doing it on the ground. That's totally fine. The one big thing you're going to want to know, or to make sure, is that the mounts are directionally correct. So the slots should be facing, or the notches should be facing the front, which is up here. You don't want to put the crossbars on backwards. You might run into some fitment issues. So we're going to take our side plates, and I kind of just loosely lined them up here to be both lined up on the small mounting slots. So you're going to be the first slot in front of the mountain for the rear crossbar, and the very first slot on the top of the side plate for the front crossbar. So basically I have 2 socket buttons per crossbar for each side, and we'll just be getting those installed. And later on, we're going to make sure these are nice and centered up. But for right now, I'm just going to get them started, and we can adjust the position later. A little bit awkward to do by yourself. Might be helpful to have a friend give you a hand, but definitely can be done. Just be careful to not drag everything off the table and damage your rack. So, and once we get this side on, we're going to do the same to the other side. So both side plates are on. Everything's loose. You can slide it back and forth. What we're going to do now is, it's a little bit awkward, but kind of going upside down, trying to line your slots up, or the crossbars up in the middle of the slot as best as you can. This isn't final by any means. We can do this again once it's up on the truck, but getting it close right now is going to help not have to adjust as much when we're up there, and make everything line up a little bit nicer when we get it up initially. So I'm going to just get these snug, but I'm not going crazy on tightness. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So now we're going to be doing our fairing. This is another one of our only racks where we ever do this off the truck, but it's going to make it easier in the long run. So we have our fairing here. You have your two flanges, and these are going to be on the inside of the rack. So I have 2 socket buttons per side with their washers, and then 2 more washers, and 2 nylock nuts per side. So what we're going to be doing is setting it up all the way at the top of the slot. That way when we go up there, if there's any kind of issue with the placement, it's going to be as high as it can be. And we're going to just get it snug. That way when we're up there, again, we can just loosen it like 1 turn and slide it down to adjust to the proper height. So yeah, we'll get that installed now. And it's a little bit easier if you have a friend help you with this one. You're going to want to go on the underside of this, make sure your fairing mount is on the inside of the fairing, and it should be, assuming you marked your center mark right, should be relatively close to in line with that hole in the fairing. So the socket buttons are going to be going in from the outside of the rack, just like on your crossbars. And I'm right away sliding all the way down to the top of the slot. And the reason we're going to get these mostly tight now is because when it's on the truck, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room in there. So it's a lot easier to do it off the truck when you have all this room to mess around with versus up there. It can be done, but I recommend definitely doing it down here when it's easier. Another important note with these nylocks, you're going to hit a hard point to turn pretty much right off the bat. That's simply the bolt hitting the nylock. So I'm going to go grab a Allen and a 7/16 wrench and run them all the way down. Okay, so I'm running this down, and I'm going to go all the way to tight. I got it tight, and then I'm going to take it and go back about a quarter turn. That way it's still tight, but really easy to adjust when it's up on the truck. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Tighten almost all the way down, get it there, and then again, quarter turn back. And it should be snug, but you'll be able to adjust that real easy when it's up on the truck. All right, so the final bit of hardware that we're going to be putting on before it goes up is the final socket button through the front of the fairing. So you're going to be going up that way. If you're not lined up on the center, this is a good time to do so. And washer, and our final nylock. And again, we're going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be getting it mostly tight, but this definitely will be adjusted later on, so don't go crazy on this one. And we can leave all of that loose as well. So yeah, now we're ready to basically get the rack up on the truck. This is definitely a spot where we'd have somebody step in to give you a hand. This is also one of the final chances you have to really easily check and make sure everything is where it needs to be. Mainly when I say that, I mean double check and triple check your rivet mounts. Make sure that your front rivet mounts are the contoured ones. Make sure your rear rivet mounts are the flat ones. Other than that, double check your notches. Make sure your notches are facing forward on both sides, and that all your hardware is installed where it should be. Finally, make sure these are nice and loose. You want to make them loose, but not loose to the point where they're sliding all the way down when you pick it up. So what I like to do is I like to get it a decent amount out towards the side plate, and then I just go finger tight on one of them. That will hold it, so when I'm bringing the rack up to drop over the truck, that will hold it in place, hopefully. So I'm going to just do that on all of these. It also makes it really easy for whoever's on the other side of the truck to just loosen that one up, and then you can adjust and set down on the roof without damaging the paint or running into any awkward issues. So we'll go get a friend to help us get this up here. I'm going to bring a Sharpie up with me, and we'll go over what it's going to look like. All right, one thing you're going to notice about this truck in particular is that there's already some sections of this weather stripping missing. That's because we did a lot of the testing for this rack on this truck, so we've already removed some of the weather stripping. One thing that we haven't removed yet that we will be removing is this kind of gooey double-sided tape. I'm not going to do that yet. What I'm going to do first is get the rack up here and make Sharpie marks. That way I can scrape off what we need to, don't have to mess with the rest. But what I recommend doing is pulling all the weather stripping out and just having it out of the way. That way when you get your rack up, drilled, everything's in, you can just cut your weather stripping. It's really easy to cut and put it back in if you want to. This stuff's not 100% necessary. I know a lot of people like to have it in there after their rack's on their truck, but definitely not necessary. And you shouldn't have any more issues with water. So get your weather stripping off to begin with, get some friends, and we're gonna get the rack up on the truck. So I have 2 people here helping me. I highly recommend having at least 2 people. Otherwise, best of luck, but it's pretty awkward. It's relatively heavy, and you're just gonna wanna try to keep it off the paint as much as possible. This truck's pretty tall, so we have to get a few extra people, but we're gonna hand it on over. And Riley's gonna grab that side. And then, now that we got it over the truck, Riley's gonna start messing with the mounting feet on that side to get it into position. And once he has his mounting feet in the tracks on that side, I'll adjust my mounts on this side and we'll drop it on. You wanna be gentle on your antenna and everything like that. There's a pretty good chance you'll be touching it a little bit when you're dropping the rack on, but you just wanna minimize scratching that as much as possible. So now he's in. And it looks like these mounts are actually lining up relatively well with some small adjustments. So I'm still setting it down really gently because I don't know how it's sitting up here, but it looks like we have actually really good fitment. This is why we kept the fairing up top as much as we could. But yeah, now nothing's centered yet, but you can already tell that it's sitting roughly in the semi-correct area. And now we can just go ahead and start adjusting the rack back and forth and finding some good spots to drill. Before we get too far, this is a good time to check your centering. I moved these out for a little bit of, just for purposes to show you guys, but this is a good chance to loosen these 2 socket buttons up and get these 2 crossbars as centered as you can in the front slot and the rear slot. This is just gonna ensure that nice fitment and really makes it look like you know what you're doing when you're picking the spot to drill the rack. So you can measure it if you want. I'm not gonna go that far, but I'm gonna find the nice happy medium of dead center, and we'll tighten it down. Just watch when you're tightening to make sure the side plate doesn't walk back and forth on you. Sometimes the threads will grab the aluminum a little bit. And do the same thing on the rear. And once I got this side all centered up, I'm gonna go ahead and hop over there and do the same on that side. The other benefit of centering these now is once you pick your happy spot, you get your mounts drilled in, everything's solid, you still have adjustability back and forth. So if your drill bit slips or if you drill a little bit farther forward than you think you wanted to, you can always slide the whole rack back and get that proper fitment that we're looking for on these racks. So now that I got these centered, I'm gonna hop over there, make sure those are centered, and then we're gonna work on centering the entire rack on the truck side to side. Okay, so now that the rack is on the truck, nothing is tight yet. So this is gonna be the time that we're gonna be adjusting everything. The most critical adjustment right now is gonna be forward and back, because that's gonna be determining where our holes are going in the roof. Side to side, it's good to get it as square as you can right now, but that can always be adjusted later on once the rack's drilled. We're really gonna wanna focus on front to back. One important thing to note too is make sure that your fairing, if you set it all the way up, make sure it's all the way up on both sides. That's gonna make sure that you're looking at everything's square as you're looking at it. If one side slid down like it did on ours, you wanna make sure to bump that back up. It'll just help you with that appearance of making it look like everything's square. This truck is really nice. If you have the clearance lights, that's really nice helping or to help you center the rack on the truck. You have one light in the dead center, and you have a bolt directly in the dead center of the fairing, so you can kind of stand directly in front of it, see side to side. You can always lower the fairing down to get a better view, or better presentation of that clearance on those lights. But really what we're looking for right now before we drill is going to be the forward and back of the rack. I'm pretty happy with how it's sitting right now, but I think it is going to have to go back a little bit. The biggest thing that you're looking for is that the bottom edge of the roof rack is matching the top of the roof. So that spline should really follow that roof line really nicely. So if you see it separating anywhere in the front a little bit too much, maybe it needs to go back. It's a little too close in the back, maybe it needs to go forward. So we're going to adjust this forward and back. We're going to do it on both sides to make sure it's nice and square. I'm going to grab a Sharpie. We'll mark where those spots are, and we'll get ready to start drilling. So the rack's up on the truck. We're happy where it's sitting. The mounting crossbars are centered in the slots. So what I'm going to do now, and this is kind of optional, this is what I like to do just to make it a little bit easier for myself. I have a Sharpie, and I'm just going to mark the edge of each of the mounting feet. So I'm going to be marking this because I want to know exactly where to scrape off that rubber, so I don't, or that sticky adhesive stuff, so I don't have to scrape off more than I need to. And I'm going to be doing that on both the front and the rear. And I'm also going to be punching some holes. So these are going to be our first holes that we're punching. I have a long punch here, and this is actually a pick, but it works really well. Thank you. But I'm going to be doing some initial holes just to get that center of that rivet mount in the right spot. I'm going to remember as soon as we get this rack off to punch those a few more times because we really want to make sure those punched holes are visible through that sticky double-sided tape. So one thing I'm going to have to do to get the front one is I'm going to probably have to drop the fairing all the way down to the bottom. It might lightly rest on the antenna, but we'll probably get a microfiber in there to not scratch it. And yeah, so this is going to be your final step to finding the placement of the rack. So double check, triple check, walk around the truck, make sure your rack's where you want it to be sitting, and then let's make the marks. Once you make the marks, go ahead and punch some holes. If you haven't already, it's a really good idea to try to get these rivet mounts in the center of the track as much as you can. This gives you a little wiggle room if anything walks or does anything funky. It'll also just make it easier in the end run so you're not resting up against your paint. It should be the cleanest install, and we'll make everything line up the best. So I'm in the center of the track here. Both of my spots are marked, so I'm going to make some punches. One thing to note on this truck is that the double side tape is a little bit slippery, so your punch may slide a little bit when you're trying to get a center hole. So punch it, make sure it's in the center. If it's not, make a mental note of that, and make sure that hole is as centered as possible. The closer you get to center on both of them, the easier it's going to install. Easier it installs, easier the rack will go back on. So the holes are punched. We're going to be taking the rack back off now. Have a friend step back in. We'll get the rack off, clear that goo out, punch the holes, and drill some holes. Oh my God. It's fine, you can just... All right, so the rack's out of the way. First thing I'm doing, grabbing my punch, the real punch this time, and just going back over and giving it a bunch of punches. I really don't want to lose those holes when I start scraping that double-sided tape off. So make sure those holes are nice and punched. The idea is when the tape's gone, you'll still see that hole in the metal, and we'll get those cleared on all four corners, and we'll get the drills out. All the double-sided tape is removed and the holes are punched. So now we're going to be taking the rivet mounts off of the rack. We're going to do this on all four corners. This is why we just kept them finger tight. And these are going to be going up. We're going to double check our holes with these. Again, making sure you have the flats together and the contours together. We'll go up, check our holes, and then we'll get to the fun part. I have the rivet mounts up here. I'm just now double checking to finally make sure that the holes line up with the holes on the rivet mount. If they do, they're good to go and ready to be drilled. Some of them you might notice that your punch might have slipped a few times, and it might be you might have a couple different marks. So this is a really good chance to figure out which one of those is the correct one and commit to one of them. So once you're happy with that, you want to just check all sides, and we'll get the drill set up. Now we're going to start drilling. What I have here is a 3/16 drill bit. It has a nice step up on the bottom of it, which is really helpful, especially if you're just going to go straight to a 3/16. I also will use a drill stop. This is critical. I always say absolutely use one of these 100%. This will just keep you from plummeting too deep in and potentially touching airbags or anything else in there that you do not want to be touching. This truck, luckily, is really nice. You'll notice that we haven't pulled the headliner. There's a huge pocket pretty much under the entire rain gutter that gives you enough room to drill in there comfortably. But again, definitely still use one of these. It saved me countless times, so definitely a good idea. But yeah, once we get it going, we're ready to start drilling, and just be careful, make sure the drill bit doesn't walk on you, and don't put too much pressure on just in case you go too far down. When drilling these trucks, a lot of times you can feel yourself starting to get close, so you can kind of ease onto the pressure, keep that pressure on, but then you'll start feeling the drill bit doing some work. That's when you can kind of back off a little bit. That way you don't go shooting through and damage anything. It's also a good idea after you drill one hole, just double check. Why not? You're here, double check the hole. Maybe if your bit walked a little bit, you can adjust the other one. In this case it didn't, so we're gonna go ahead and just drill that other one. It's also important when you're drilling these to drill from a straight down angle. That's because that's going to be how the rivet's going to be going in. You don't want to be going cockeyed or at any weird angle. If you do that, your rivet mount's going to start sitting weird, and that's going to allow a potential for water intrusion. So make sure you're getting a nice straight angle on it, and keep drilling. All right, the holes are drilled. The next step you're going to want to do is either get a vacuum or air hose, and make sure that that surface is really clean, free of any metal shavings, anything like that. And then you're basically just gonna get your rivets, get them inserted through the rivet holes on the mounts, making sure they're flat. This is your final chance to make sure the flat's in the rear and the contour's in the front. And then it's a good idea to just line it up, make sure everything fits as it should. Should be a nice, tight, snug squeeze, which it is. And once you have confirmed that they fit properly, we'll get them riveted in, which we're going to need some silicone for and a rivet gun. We highly recommend the battery-powered rivet tools. If you have one, they work great. If you don't, any handheld rivet tool will work just fine. But yeah, we're going to get a little detail spray in there just to make sure that surface is nice and clean, and then we'll rivet them in. So the holes are all cleaned up, surface area is prepped. Take my silicone. What I'm going to do is start in the center of that hole, fill that hole, and then just expand out a little bit to make sure you get good coverage on the whole surface around the hole that you drilled in the roof. Not a bad idea to use a lot, well, not a lot, but use as much as you think you should, because you don't want to go too light on this and have any kind of water issues. So a little extra is not going to hurt you, but you don't want it to be a mess either. So I like to get a nice coverage on all the holes. And once you have that area covered, you can set that silicone aside. Final chance, contoured for the front. Take your rivets. And drop them into the holes. Still should be a nice snug fit. Once you got them in, rivet gun. Make sure both are seated all the way. And then as a little extra security, I like to put a little dab right on the top of that rivet where you can see the center of it. Just a little extra security. We want to close up every possible entrance for water. Doesn't need to be much. Just gets you that little bit of extra insurance there. And again, final check on the rear. It's a flat into the holes. Seated on the roof. When you push down, you want to make sure you're pushing down hard. Looks like maybe that time I wasn't. I feel it bite. And there you go. We're going to do the same thing on that side, and then the rack's ready to be installed. Rivet mounts are riveted to the roof with silicone. We're going to do this one more time, being careful again. Get the rack on for the final time. Whoa, can you grab this for a second?
I got it.
Final time for the final install. Oh, man. And then again, Riley's going to do his side first. This mount should be nice and loose, and I'm just going to hold my end up. And he's just going to get one bolt started in each mount. Doesn't need to go tight or anything like that. We're just getting it so we can have a nice place to rest the rack without resting it on the paint. You might have to work together a little bit to make sure you can get your mounts on the rivet feet, because the things have shifted quite a bit and gotten a little bit awkward, tightened up. All right, so now I'm just going to do the same thing on this side. Basically just getting 2 bolts started, 1 in each mount, and that's when we're going to go back and after this we'll go back and get everything centered up and properly tightened down. But if you installed your rivet mounts correctly, the bolts should thread in pretty easily. It's been going easily for us so far, so that means we've done something right. Once you get them both started though, you can go ahead and throw the other 2 in, and we'll get working on centering it. All the bolts are started into the rivet mounts. I have a 13 on an extension. I also have a ratcheting 13 wrench. It's pretty awkward to get to the front one, but you can do it, just gotta be patient. Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten all of these down. You can basically get all of these all the way tight. If you start running into issues where you're binding up, you can always loosen them up a little bit. That usually helps you get in, be able to move the crossbars back and forth a little bit easier. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten them, assuming that we did everything properly and are still gonna be able to move around. Another thing you're gonna wanna make sure is that you're not pushing the rack back and forth, getting into the paint on either of the sides. But yeah, so we're gonna tighten these down and then basically go around the rack like we did earlier, center it up, take some measurements, just center it visually and tighten everything down, and we'll start getting crossbars in. But we'll check back in after that. When we're centering it, the only thing you're really going to need to do is get a 7/16 wrench and tighten these bolts going up into the crossbars when you're happy with where it's sitting on the truck. And yeah, basically getting ready to wrap it up. All right, so we kind of walked around the rack. We took measurements in the back. Ours ended up coming out to about 3.5 inches from inside of side plate to the inside face of the mount. That was a good starting spot, and then just a bunch of walking around the truck. Really, what it comes down to is centering this center bolt up with the center of this clearance light, and I'm pretty happy with that. So we're just tightening down those 7/16 bolts into the crossbars, which will lock our rack in place. And we'll hop down after tightening them and take one more look. But assuming nothing, it's always good to check your placement after tightening, because sometimes when you're tightening these bolts, the rack can pull a little bit one way or another. Assuming it didn't though, we'll move on to adjusting the fairing to the proper height, getting the fairing brace tightened up, and we'll throw the crossbars in and we'll be done with this thing. When we're adjusting the fairing height, the biggest thing you're going to want to check for is contact with this antenna. This is where we find all of the noise comes from on this rack if your fairing's adjusted improperly. So yeah, you're either going to want to go up or down depending on your clearance. It's good to have a little bit of a gap there. You don't want it paper thin gap. So I like to set it up a little bit higher and kind of just get a good, nice fitment across all of the clearance lights, but mostly focusing on this antenna. If you can picture any kind of wind during a drive, you're going to notice this is where you're going to be having contact. This will make a lot of noise if it's hit. Also, you just don't want to damage that plastic. So we're going to go up a little bit and find a happy spot and tighten this down. To do that, 7/16 box end on the end of the nuts on the inside, and then Allen on the outside, and tighten her down. This can be adjusted if you're driving and you have any kind of noise. This is a really easy first spot to start and in diagnosing any sort of wind noise issues. All right, so now we're going to be tightening this fairing brace to the fairing. Pretty straightforward. I like to get the ratcheting end of a wrench on the back of the nylock nut behind the fairing. And hindsight, probably would have gotten this a little tighter before getting it up on the truck, but still not too bad to get access to. So I like to get the ratcheting end on, and then with the Allen, you can kind of just use a ratcheting motion to get it tightened down. What this is going to do for you is help with the wind and vibration throughout the whole rack, and kind of just stiffen up the front fairing as a whole, since this rack does not come with a crossbar behind the fairing. So once you get this nice and tight, we are going to also tighten down the 2 7/16 that are running up into the crossbar below. If you remember, we left those loose, and those should be very easy to access and tighten up. All right, so the fairing is adjusted and tightened. Again, this is going to be your first place to check if you start having any kind of wind noise. Chances are it's going to be vibration off of that antenna. So we're going to set it up like this for now. We're going to take it out and drive it later. But this is all tightened. Mounting feet are tightened into the roof. Bolts going up from the mounting feet to the crossbar are tightened up. Everything's centered and squared. We have 5 crossbars remaining, so what we're going to do is space them out as evenly as we can. You will have 1 slot open depending on how you set your crossbars up. They don't have to be set up like this, but we recommend trying to get a nice distribution of crossbars throughout the entire rack. But feel free to adjust it however you may need to carry whatever you are carrying. So really straightforward on the crossbars. Good last step to have a friend help you and just get them all in there and tightened up. All right, so that wraps up the install of the Diablo rack. All the crossbars are up and secured. Rack's really stout, looks great on the truck. As always, if you have any issues or concerns while you're doing the install or before you do the install, before you even order the rack, please do not hesitate to reach out. Somebody here will be happy to help you with any kind of questions or concerns you have about the rack. If you need help finding a dealer, give us a call too. We can help you get set up with a dealer or an installer that can take on this rack and do the install with no problem. Always a good idea after driving it for a little while, a couple weeks or a week or so, go back through, just put your hands on all the hardware one more time, make sure nothing's backed out. Other than that, once the rack's on there and secure for about a week, you should be good to go with no more issues. Yeah, rack looks great on the truck. Thanks for watching.